A century and a half later, in the new territories above Hong Kong, the Gurkhas still serve the British Crown. Many as their fathers, grandfathers, even great-grandfathers did before them. The Union Jack will come down here in 1997, but in the meantime they continue to maintain vigilant surveillance against any footloose Chinese attempting to preempt treaties. China's yearning to get here is obvious. Their half of the bridge into Hong Kong is already built. From these Red China skyscrapers across the wire, the would-be infiltrators constantly make a break for it, to reach a British-dependent territory already teeming with the Orient's refugees. The Gurkhas patrol their side of the wire on a silent, stealthy form of transport. But coming from Nepal, high up in the Himalayas, there is occasional evidence that cycling may not exactly be a coming sport. The general's reference to the short weapon of their country, worn on the hip, was to the legendary kukri. It's used for everything from chopping vegetables to shaving, but its primary function is to inspire the fear of God.
In fact, I think the last time our regiment used a kukri in anger was in 1967 on the Hong Kong.
These are the second King Edward VII's own Gurkha Rifles, direct descendants of the Gurkhas at Sobraon. What saves these new recruits from being labelled mercenaries, troops merely hired to fight for some foreign power, is that they swear their oath of allegiance directly to the Queen of England. Gurkha loyalty has never been in question since they stormed Delhi during the Indian Mutiny. Henceforth, they were to be known not as sepoys but riflemen, which required them to march precisely at 140 paces to the minute. Queen Victoria presented them not with colours but a ceremonial truncheon. No man is a Gurkha soldier until he has formally touched the Queen's truncheon.
Queen Victoria
He says that yes, when we were given the Nishanimai, the Queen's truncheon, originally after the siege of Delhi, it was given to us by a queen, and at that stage to Gurkhas in Nepal and elsewhere, kings and queens were almost like gods. So it obviously has got an almost religious significance to it for that reason. We do treat it a bit like a god. For instance, when a man goes on leave, and before he goes there, he goes into the guard room and salutes it, as if to say, goodbye, I'm off, I'll be back in 6 months' time. Every soldier does actually pay respects to it by, again, going up to it and, in some cases, putting garlands on.
For all their ferocity in action, the Gurkhas remain uncomplicated men from the hills, to which they return the moment their fighting days are over. No corner newsagent shop for them in Britain. They're farmers who even turn their lawns here into allotments. Many bring their families and faiths that can be Hindu, Buddhist, or an amalgam of both. There's not much call for a dog-collared British Army chaplain at the naming ceremony for the daughter of Corporal Arjun Rai. It requires a Hindu pundit, acquainted with the mystical configurations of the zodiac that actually determine the child's name exactly 11 days after birth. The curious thing is that morning prayers for the Gurkha children remind you of what it used to be like at some British schools, and yet there's been no missionary attempt to evangelize. Perhaps the instinct of obedience owes a little to the military environment.
School standard is
One of the customs that we have inherited from the Indian Army is that when a man is brought in front of an officer, either his company commander or the CEO, his escort carries the accused man belt, his hat, and his sidearms, which in our case is a kukri. I must say, when I first was faced with this, I rather thought the kukri that was carried in case the man tried to attack me. That has never happened. And it's really signifying that he's not fit to, at that time, until the case is dismissed, to carry sidearms of the regiment. 2117, 2098, Rifleman Purnabahada Limbu, you are charged with the conduct, the prejudice of good order and military discipline.
The charge was a minor one, trivial even if you balk at standards that demand that your bed space is a masterpiece of symmetry. Pin-ups, the aide-memoir of lonely soldiers the world over, are conspicuous by their absence. Well, almost. One Gurkha has an honoured place for a former colonel of the regiment, Field Marshal the Lord Bramall. He simply liked him.
Everybody's covering off, are they?
Today's head of the British Army, General Sir John Chappell, is himself a Gurkha with a lifelong appreciation of the Gurkha's attributes.
I'm sure that the Nepali citizen, the Gurkha soldier, because he comes from a proud and independent country, brings with him a certain feeling of independence. He's his own man. There's something in that. But I think more than that, he's a Highlander, of course, from a pretty tough background environment where it's quite difficult to make a living. Indeed, it's quite difficult to survive sometimes. And he brings with him, therefore, if he survives all the rigours of infancy and upbringing there, a fairly tough individual. And like a lot of Highland people, he's independent of mind. He's not in the least going to be subservient to anyone. On the other hand, he is going to acknowledge readily and openly and freely the qualities that other people might display.
Some of those qualities, it must be said, are more apparent than others. No one outside the Gurkhas questions too deeply the ingredients of kaini. Nominally a blend of coarse tobacco and lime, it has the kick of a dry martini.
The most of Gurkha, they chewing the kaini instead of cigarette, and it is because it is much more cheaper than the cigarette. It doesn't damage the health as well as a cigarette. If you are on the patrol, either ambush or something that, because you know if we smoke, it is smelled 100 meters around the area. But if we are showing the kaini, it is better than the other cigarettes. Tactical cigarette.
Tactical cigarette.
Then make it gather, then like this, and put in here. This is the kaini.
双方主要领导人入场，请全体起立。降旗升旗仪式现在开始，请全体起立。现在将联合王国国旗和香港旗升中华人民共和国国旗和香港特别行政区区旗。